Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the great human adventure, all through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host, and I'm so happy that you're here today. Our guest is on fire. I'm talking about Type 3, Brooke Taylor. Brooke is a career coach, speaker, and former marketing lead at Google, where she generated more than $80 million in value. But behind that success, she was privately battling what she now calls the success wound, the painful pattern of tying achievement to self-worth. Now she helps high-achieving women heal their relationships with success, ambition, and validation. Her work has reached more than 5,000 leaders at companies like Google, Uber, Coinbase, McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, and Salesforce. And she's become a leading voice on the hidden cost of looking successful while quietly running on empty. She has a brand new book titled Healing the Success Wound. You'll want to make sure and check that out. Like I said, she came into this interview on fire. So much good stuff that she brought to us. I know you're going to love this conversation. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. And now, without any further ado, here is the man of the hour, Ian Cron.
Enneagram Three, Brooke Taylor, author of the new book, Healing the Success Wound. Welcome to Typology.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's just start way at the beginning. You're an Enneagram 3, which of course ties right into the topic of this whole book, Healing the Success Wound. I mean, gosh, if anyone's going to write a book about healing the success wound, it's going to be an Enneagram 3. How'd you learn you were an Enneagram 3, and where do you think it all started for you?
From birth, I was born an Enneagram 3, and I really believe that my cultural upbringing, my familial upbringing, and maybe part of the reason why I'm here on this earth is because of my dependence upon achievement, external validation, and approval to feel enough and safe in this world. I grew up in Silicon Valley in the 90s where, the nerdiest programmers could come and be these rock stars. And that was the promise. All they had to do was work really, really hard. And so I learned in my cultural upbringing that hard work and sacrifice create success. And I also learned lessons like this growing up in my home, in the most innocent way. Good grades were met with wide eyes and big hugs, and scoring a goal was met with approval from coaches. And I went to a elite girls private school in the Bay Area. And from age 10, walking onto that campus, the banners around my locker were Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, Cal, Stanford. And I got the message really early that that is what a good person looks like. That's what a successful person looks like. And I started to equate my worthiness of love at home and belonging to my community through success, productivity, and achievement. So that took me to some great places. That my gold star chasing mentality took me to a wonderful college, to my first job at Google, where I ascended quite quickly because I had that hard work ethic, but I also had that compulsion, that need to be seen as successful, enviable, extraordinary. And anything less than that was not enough. I wasn't the best. So very much like the siren song of the three, I'm guessing. At the same time as that, I developed a work hard, play hard mentality of living in these extremes, working really hard Monday through Friday and turning to alcohol on the weekends to cope, to soothe that pressure, that not enoughness, that empty cup feeling that no matter how much I achieved, I still didn't feel like enough. And so I was living in this loop Monday through Friday that looked like, people pleasing, laughing at jokes from my boss that weren't funny, trying to be the best in everything that I did. And then absolutely kind of waking up in demoralization on the weekends and living this double life, at Google. And so luckily, for better or worse, that brought me to my knees very quickly. When I was 24, within a month, 3 things happened in succession. The first is that I realized I had a drinking problem. And, in the same breath, I also had an approval problem, that I was living from addiction and compulsion. And that was causing wreckage in my life. The second thing is that I was sexually harassed by my direct manager at Google, and I didn't report it, not because I wasn't brave enough, but because I was up for promotion and I didn't want to rock the boat. I couldn't anger or embarrass the very people who could grant me that approval, because without Google, who was I? I didn't know. And so I kept quiet and just kept marching forward. And the third thing that happened is my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And in these events, it has a way of, causing you to ask some big questions. But these three things happening within weeks of each other caused me to question everything. And that's what set me on this journey of figuring out who am I without my addictions and my dependencies, and how can I find a new way of relating to myself and my work that's not in this way.
Wow. Okay, Anthony, how many Enneagram Threes have we had on Typology?
Oh, probably more threes than any other type. And
probably.
Countless numbers, yeah.
Yeah. Now, that was as succinct and as clear a description of the interior journey of an Enneagram 3 as I have ever heard on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. For better or worse.
For better or for worse. That was awesome. It is really, thank you so much, because I think if nothing else, people will walk away going, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. Mm-hmm. When do you think you first felt this belief that you're only loved for what you produce? Do you have an actual memory of a time when you were a kid where that just immediately, right there?
I lived in a town called Los Altos, which is a small town very close to Palo Alto. And Palo Alto is where Stanford University is and where my girls' school was. My dad worked in Palo Alto. So every morning for 7 years, he would drive me to school. And my dad, rest in peace, he's passed now, and he was an amazing person. And, he had his struggles too. And we really bonded over being a high achievers. And I remember saying one thing to him. I remember saying, if I'm not the best, then what's the point? And he smiled. He just kind of turned to me and smiled and was like, that's my girl.
Like, you got it.
Oh, you got it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Golly, we have an Enneagram 3 friend who's been on the show, and he talks about this idea of, if you can't be the best, what's the point? And the story he tells is he was CEO of a decent sized company, and he realized he needed to learn how to play golf. And he was probably 40. And he's like, I got to learn how to play golf because all the successful guys play golf, and so much business and productivity happens on the golf course, right? And so he literally, for 6 weeks, took a golf lesson every single morning for 6 weeks. And he got, improved pretty quickly, right? But then he realized that he would never, ever be at a top golfer. So he just gave it up.
Right.
He's like, if I can't be the best, why would I want to spend all that time on it? Like, it's just this mindset of have to be the best, or what's the point?
And it seeps into things that are supposed to be for enjoyment, like our hobbies, where we start to quantify and qualify that addiction to progress, which is part of the human spirit. We want to grow, we want to ascend, we want to learn. But that can become co-opted through our success wound when we start to whisper to ourselves, well, if I'm not the best, then what's the point?
So you beautifully described your experience of the success wound. Do you have a 2-sentence sort of definition that you use in the book for what is the success wound?
Sure. So the success wound is the pain that comes from mistaking success, productivity, and achievement for self-worth. And it's the belief installed through our childhood, through our psychology, through our culture, that I am more worthy of love, belonging, and I will have more freedom and independence the more that I produce and achieve. Now, I gave a very privileged story of that. I have clients who are first-generation Americans, daughters and sons of immigrants, for whom, for me, it's success equals love and approval. For them, it's success equals survival, safety. And so that can manifest in a grinder mentality. Like, I have to always be working and producing and achieving in order to feel safe. And so their nervous system become acclimated to the push, such that any element of slowdown, it's a 5-alarm fire, and I'm not safe anymore. So that's how extreme this success wound can be. And again, it has psychological, but it also has spiritual roots too. I know you talk about this a lot, which is our yearning for God or a higher power or something transcendent becomes misplaced, and we seek it through work and significance. And I think that's the crisis that's happening today.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to do this talk tomorrow at a treatment center about the Enneagram and the 12 steps. And so the definition I have for addiction or dependency, depending on which word you want to use, is addiction arises when the unquenchable human thirst for union with the divine misdirects and pathologically fuses with a person, a behavior, or a substance.
Yeah.
And for some reason, every time I say that, I believe it more, right? Like we can say it's about trauma. It is. You can say that it's about biology, neurobiology, social, environmental factors, that all these things do contribute. I don't want to make addiction so simplistic as to say it's merely what I just said, but I think at its core, that's really what it is. That's why we call it a spiritual malady, or why Bill called it a spiritual malady, right? It's really about a search for meaning and purpose and connection with God, self, and others that just misdirects and attaches to something in a way that's, unhealthy and unskillful.
That's so true. And as you said that definition, it hit me in my heart. I had this moment where early on in my recovery, I'm 24 or 25, working at Google in Chelsea Market of New York. So west side of New York. And I would say, okay, I have a lunch meeting, and I would, clock out, so to speak. They don't care. But I would walk out the door and go to Perry Street. I'd go to my AA meetings, and I would sit next to people, bankers, politicians, unhoused people who were still maybe high in that moment. And people would be talking about this spiritual malady, this hunger, this yearning to feel whole and connected. And then I would leave those meetings. I'd go back to the halls of Google, and I'd look around and I'd say, all these people have a spiritual malady. It's just completely channeled in a socially acceptable way. But most, I will say, I don't want to say all, but so many people were addicted to the high of achievement.
Yeah. And everybody's, as I've often said, everybody, it's the human condition. We all go looking for a fix. And I love how, when you go to meetings and people say, oh, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I'm like, when I first heard that, I just rolled my eyes. But now I realize in part that we are blessed with a condition that eventually becomes publicly obvious, right? You have to do something about it. People who have a work addiction, in fact, they can be lauded until they go to an early death for the kind of, lifestyle that they engage in. I also loved what you said about esteem, security, and mastery. Those weren't your words, but let me just explain. I think all of us have needs as little people for those things: just esteem and approval, mastery and control, safety and security. 2s, 3s, and 4s, I think, have a real or perceived wound around esteem and approval.
Right.
And 5, 6s, and 7s around safety and security. 8, 9s, and 1s about mastery and control. Now, what happens then with work or achievement, right? See, any type could be a workaholic or have, all types could have a success wound. This is not just 3s, right?
Exactly.
But they might do it for different reasons.
Exactly.
So a 6 might do it, or a 7 might do it for reasons around security, the wound around security and safety. Then work becomes a dependency en route to, right? Like it becomes a fixation that solves that problem. So I just love all the overlap here.
Yes, exactly. And, I call these types in my own work and research, the 5 types of unfulfilled achievers. So these are the people who doubt if they will ever reach the heights of success and the depths of fulfillment that they crave. They want so bad to make a mark and to make it, but they keep getting tripped up over their own behavior. And there are 5 types of them. Shall I go through them and map them to
I'd love that.
Enneagram?
I'd love it. And yes.
Okay. So the first person is the grinder. So this is the person that wants to have more, do more, be more, and they equate their value in the workplace by the volume of their productivity. And this is the person, one of my clients described herself. She was watching Shark Week with her son, and there's a type of shark, maybe all sharks, that don't rest. They have to stay in constant motion in order to survive. That's what allows the oxygenation of the water to go through their gills. Right. I'm a marine biologist now, but that's what a grinder is. They have to be in constant motion. And so sure, like that could most obviously look like a 3, but that could also look like a 4 potentially, you know, the individualist and the person who's looking to like make their mark, for example. The second is the hider. And this is the most common type actually in my work. This is the person that has big dreams for their career, big dreams for their lives, but they are so scared of failure, rejection, and making a fool of themselves, being embarrassed publicly, that they stay in their comfort zone. And this person maps probably most specifically with a 6, like a loyalist mentality, right? They stay safe by staying small. And they don't realize that in order to be successful, they have to consistently be putting themselves outside of their comfort zone. The third is the seeker. We all have a friend like this, somebody who spends their day on a spectrum of confusion to existential crisis. Like the children's book, Are You My Mother? The seeker is always constantly asking, are you my purpose? Are you my purpose? They have shiny object syndrome. They keep thinking that the next thing, job, title, relationship, cleanse is going to be their thing that finally fixes their problems. And so this could maybe be like a 4 potentially, this central wound of like, I'm missing something here. And so I'm looking for something outside of myself to fix me. And then we have the work hard, play hard. This is what I was when I was at Google in my early days, the person that lives in the extremes on that dopamine seesaw between pain and pleasure. They need to be booked and busy and have all eyes on them in order to feel worthy and enough. And then we also have the pleaser. So this is maybe like a type 2, like the helper, the people who are constantly asking at work, are you mad at me? They want to be liked. They want to be helpful more than anything else. And so they have an anxious attachment style, and tend to prove their value by people liking them.
Yes. Oh man, well said. Now my 5s are going to ask, which are they?
That's a good question. What do you think based on what I've said?
Well, gosh, these all can move around a little bit, you know, like, I mean, these aren't bento boxes. So I guess, I think probably it would be either the grinder or the hider.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I meet a lot of highly productive 5s that work nonstop. And I meet a lot who are hiders as well. You know, I've worked with some tech firms, and you know, one I talk about a lot had 500 coders at the time. A lot less now, I guess, but a lot of coders back then. And they there were a lot of what I would call hider types in that firm. But they had a lot of grinding kind of dimensions too, like, gosh, some of the biggest grinds I ever met in my life, even in college, were, you know, people in computer sciences, you know, like just grinding away. So, but not that all 5s are coders, but that's sort of an archetype. But I love that how you've broken that down. Now for you talk about worth equals productivity. Like, how have you, what's the spiritual work that you've done to expose and deconstruct that lie?
I am learning a new level of that in real time as I'm on a book launch journey, which is very much like a volume game in a way that really reminds me of my corporate time. So I can speak to this from both my wound and my experience right now, which is I have to allow my higher power to define what's good enough for me, because I can't be responsible for that. My success wound will always say, it's not enough. Other people get to have it, but you don't. Oh, those types of people get to be successful and you don't. And so I'm no longer responsible for what's enough. I have to ask my God what's enough. And my God in meditation and prayer consistently says, it's enough. You're doing a good job. Focus on the connection. Focus on these moments, or else you'll miss the whole thing. And another reminder, I don't know the impact that I'm having. I need to trust that that's God's business and not mine.
I love that. I have a similar practice that I go through. When you said that, I just got like chill bumps. That's powerful.
How do you relate to that yourself?
Well, I've done this practice for decades now. It's a journaling practice, but it's asking questions. And then I also pair it with meditation, but it's checking in with what I'm thinking, feeling, doing, and then asking God, what are you thinking, feeling, doing? And allowing his feelings to trump my feelings.
I like that.
It's like, and that doesn't mean to ignore my feelings, but if I'm feeling, for instance, I have like a little practice where I might walk into a room full of people, and I'm equal parts introvert, extrovert. I'm a 4. But I'll have a rosary in my pocket, and I walk into a room, and all of us, for whatever reason, I just feel lonely. I feel like, classic Enneagram 4 on the outside looking in. Sometimes I might walk in and be the center of the party, have all kinds of energy. But in those moments where I feel, oh man, I just feel like I don't belong here, I'll just put my hand in my pocket, start working through that rosary. I'm connected to the fact that I feel lonely. So I need connection. And I just like, you love me, 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 you love me. And just work through that rosary. And then as a Christian, I come around to the cross and I just think about his sacrifice. You care for me, you're with me, you're with me. And before I know it, it's like his affection for me has trumped my feelings of loneliness, and I feel connected, and it opens up the door for me in that room.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And what I love about that is that you're bringing that spiritual practice off of your prayer pillow or meditation space and into the room.
Yes.
And I think that's what a lot of, especially like growth mindset, self-actualization, inclined people miss, is how do I bring that spiritual practice into the office, into the Zoom room, into the conversation? Because we have this habit, and I know it so deeply, of tuning into the Typology podcast on my commute and then forgetting everything that I've just learned because I just walked into the room, right? We have this amnesia. And so having those really tangible practices is what I aspire to bring in the book and to my clients. How do I bring that spiritual awareness into those moments that matter?
I love that.
So, Brooke, this book is specifically targeted at women, but my impression, based on everything we've said so far, is that a man could read this book and derive as much benefit from it as a woman would. Is that true or not?
100%. I am a career coach for women specifically. And so I felt very comfortable talking about the success wound as it manifests in women because that's been my research. However, the success wound is non-gendered. It's a human experience. And in fact, let me talk about kind of like the roots of it and how in my limited experience, it can be applied to men and how they might differ. So in my research, I did a survey with over 5,000 people who are considered high achievers. So they're in a professional role and they have a growth mindset of some kind, but they identified as being unfulfilled. And I asked the question, what do you see to be the root of your career problems? The answers I got won't surprise you. My boss, my job description, my burnout, my low confidence, my self-esteem issues, my imposter syndrome, my perfectionism, all of the things that we typically point to and that there's a lot of content around. But the research said a different story. These people actually had 3 things in common that had nothing to do with those. The first is that they had a childhood experience, like in my story, of learning that the more that they produced, achieved, and did, the more love, belonging, and approval they would have. The more they lived up to a culturally sanctified or sanctioned definition of goodness for them, the more connection they would have. The second thing that they all had was this empty cup feeling, this spiritual malady, this God-shaped hole, this void, this yearning for something else. That then led to step 3 or part 3, which is the habit of searching for external approval, validation, significance to fill that inner void. Now, that is not a gendered thing. That showed up in the data across men and women. How women typically respond to it can be in those 5 types. Men can a little bit more go into, well, so the root of typically around gender lines, according to research done by Brene Brown, is that shame on gender lines for men is rooted in being a provider. And for women, it's about perfectionism and image. So I think that might clue us into the difference in success wounding, because I think for men, it's a lot more around being a provider.
As you know, I believe the Enneagram is one of the most powerful tools for developing self-awareness. But to gain the benefits, you need to know your type. Taking an Enneagram assessment is the first step toward understanding yourself and the people around you. It offers insights that can enhance your self-awareness, personal growth, emotional intelligence, your relationships. It's not just a one-time test. It's a lifelong tool that will help you navigate life with more clarity, purpose, and empathy. And now, when you take my brand new Typology Institute Enneagram assessment, you'll receive a research-backed, scientifically evidenced, comprehensive report that's easy to understand. Not only will you learn your dominant Enneagram type, but you'll gain insight into aspects of the Enneagram most other assessments don't cover, such as your dominant wing, your subtype, orientation to time, and even stances. Get your results today at typologyinstitute.com/assessment. Enter the discount code Typology Podcast on the checkout page to get 10% off your assessment. Again, that's typologyinstitute.com/assessment and enter Typology Podcast for 10% off. So you have 2 terms in the book that I think are really interesting for an Enneagram 3 to talk about, and also for our listeners who are 3s or who love 3s should hear about, which is the socialized self versus the true self. Unpack those ideas for me, because obviously, for a 3, image and adaptation are survival strategies, right?
That's
so
right.
Walk me through it a little bit.
Sure. So when I found out about this way of conceiving of the psyche, it really did change everything for me. And this is chapter 3 in the book. We often, the self that's sitting in front of you today, we like to think of as a singular self. That we actually have 3 parts of our psyche. And this is based on internal family systems work and Gestalt psychology. We have the true self, the wounded self, and the protector self, or the socialized self. That true self is not just, as Brooke Taylor sees it, that there's like very strong psychological basis for this. This self is, you could call it a spiritual self or, a psychological self, but it's characterized by a state of being calm, content, clear, present, playful, curious. We have this other part of our psyche that develops as we go through life. We all end up with wounds and we get hurt. None of us make it out of here unscathed. That is what creates a wounded self, the part of us that houses all the hurt, shame, embarrassment, and experiences, again, in my story of, not feeling enough or learning again to suppress parts of my authenticity in favor of being the best in my dad's eyes. That's my wounded self. Now, my protector self, or socialized self, however you want to call it, is the mask that we all wear in order to protect that wounded self. And so that mask are those 5 types: grinder, hider, pleaser, seeker, work hard, play hard. And those are the typical parts of us that show up in our workday when we're operating from our success wound. Because our ambition is it's like a lamp. It needs a power source in order to illuminate. And it only has 2 sources of power. Our lamp, when it is plugged into our wounded self, and to our success wound, results in those protector part strategies, the parts of us that want to hide, please, grab, manipulate, push, and control. But when our ambition is plugged into our true self, that's when we get a state of harmony, contentment, creativity, and possibility from our career. And that's when our career is actually fulfilling.
I love that we've done a lot of work on the show around internal family systems. And I think like we could either add one or change one thing that based on our own experience, that there is that other, the firefighter self, which when our normal strategies for making life don't work or don't address the pain that fully, right, will activate and will try in a very reactive, not proactive, but highly reactive way to extinguish the pain. And that's where alcohol, drugs, sex, you name it, whatever, overeating, right? It's just like, okay, my normal strategies are no longer working. Now I have to resort to something more dramatic, more, life impacting, but temporarily satisfying, right? So I love the terminology.
Yeah, I do too. And that firefighter in IFS is a type of a protector part. Yeah. It's the parts of us that, leap into control. And so what a lot of people don't understand about career fulfillment, but that is in living color through this model, is that fulfillment comes from how we work, not what we do for work. We overcomplicate career fulfillment thinking, oh, it's the next job, or aligning my responsibilities better to my strengths, although that is important, or, oh, this boss is bumming me out, or not my champion, so that's what's wrong with my career. But 60% of the people who come to me with those problems, thinking the job is the problem, end up staying in their job once they fix their ways of working in relationship with success. And I think that's revelatory, because in a world that's so quick to point and blame, that's what's wrong. Again, my boss, my colleagues, my job description, my title, I didn't get promoted, my salary. They're so hesitant to turn inward and say, what's my part? And this book is the what's my part conversation.
It's funny. I grew up in a town similar to yours. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which may be on the other coast, but it's virtually the same thing, very similar. Yeah. And the dynamic was so Enneagram Three. I oftentimes say it was like in the 1970s and 80s when I was growing up, it was like ground zero for Enneagram Threes, right?
Wow.
The blast zone was intense. And I went to, the right schools. I played that game. I knew how to do that. I learned to play squash. I had 2 majors. I was running, doing the whole thing. And, I did go through a long season of what I would call workaholism, which isn't a term we've used yet because we're talking about the success wound. I suppose workaholism could be one product of it.
Yes.
But where I became so over-identified with my achievements, but I then migrated more into the realm of soft things like becoming an Episcopal priest or being a therapist and being a songwriter. These were so the metrics were so different than my peers who went to work for Goldman Sachs, right? But it was the same dynamic even there, right? Like it's all contextual. Like what is success, right? You could be a social justice person working in the inner city and still have a success wound that is driving you to be the absolute best advocate for the poor that ever lived, right? Like Dorothy Day, the founder of the Catholic Workers Movement, was an Enneagram 3. Like people always go like, what? Like, yeah, she was a acknowledged 3. So
that's fascinating.
Again, so it's contextual. I don't want people thinking necessarily that success, only applies when because I think people's mind is, investment bankers, or, people working for Google or for Apple, or it's like, no. It's purely contextual. If you're an Enneagram 3 or a person with a success wound living in a mafia family is not going to manifest that wound in the same way. The metrics are going to change, but the drive and the wound are going to be the same.
That's exactly right. There's a story in the book where kind of 2 years into my aligned ambition experiment and 2 years into my recovery, I was starting to feel better. I even switched jobs, got off that toxic team, had a wonderful manager, wasn't in sales anymore, but was doing public speaking and things that really aligned with my skill set. And although my work hard, play hard wasn't my default anymore, I created a success ideal that was almost as insidious. And it was the ideal of perfect balance. Wellness became my obsession. And online, people joke a lot about like the party girl to wellness pipeline. That intensity.
Well, it could be worse.
No, but it's dark. There's a dark side of that. It's like one side of the spectrum doing hallucinogens, going to music festivals, staying up all night, all of that, to now I'm doing yoga at 6 a.m., working a long day, going downtown to therapy, then going to a recovery meeting, then running my coaching business and closing the day off with a meditation and going to bed at 10 p.m. I was obsessed with fixing myself, figuring out what was wrong with me so that I could finally be the girl who finally had it all together and looked good on the outside, because I was so sick and tired of being messy. And so it just swung the opposite way. And I found myself crying in a phone room again, which is where I found myself quite often when things weren't going well. And I was like, gosh, I've done so much work on myself. How is this still happening? How do I still feel empty on the inside? And what I realized now in retrospect and teach my clients is that until you set your own God-given definition of success, your success wound will set it for you. It will just change shape in the same way that our addictions change shape unless we fix the spiritual malady underneath. And I've spent time in OA, and I've, one addiction turned into the next. I've spent time in Al-Anon. AA is kind of my main one, but I really, really, especially on this book launch, have to watch myself around, that image of perfection, which I guess is kind of a 3. That's a 3 thing too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or the image of competence.
Competence. Nice one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the image of confidence as well as competence, the image of I can win and make it look easy as if I'm just rolling right out of me, Mm-hmm. And I love that you're, showing how this leaks, right? Because it's not like this mindset, the success wound only appears in our professional space. Because I have met many, my wife and I used to talk about this when we lived in Greenwich. We see these moms that weren't working, right? Now, they may have gone to Harvard, but they just chose to have children and stay home. But now they were like Enneagram 3 moms, right? They were the most confident, competent mom raising the most amazing children, all of whom were going to live the same life they lived, like creating 100%. facsimiles of themselves, mm-hmm. right? And it was, they're going to have the best parties. They're going to have the most beautiful Christmas tree. They're going to have it was just insane, the level of kind of this external locus of validation.
Yes.
Right? Outside of themselves. And it looked exhausting. And they had the perfect bodies and they were always wearing yoga clothes and they're always, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm tired looking at you.
I know. Oh my gosh. There for the grace of God go I. I fear I could slip into that. But thanks to this, you mentioning it. And I also went to a event yesterday with a woman named Neha Rook, who wrote a book called The Power Pause. And she talks about that. She went to Stanford Business School, had her first kid, and was like, I want to be home with my children. And that was a great choice for her. But she did notice that her children's behavior became her KPIs. And how they showed up was a measure of her success or not. So that's something to look out for too.
Yeah. So what I keep coming back to in my mind as you're talking is, and not with any sectarian interest at all, but the answer ultimately to the success wound is spiritual in nature. So I'm not saying it's Buddhist. I'm not saying it's Christian. I'm not saying it's Jew is like related to any Judeo-Christian, formula. I'm just saying the answer is fundamentally spiritual, isn't it?
It is. It is. And, this idea of aligned ambition, when ambition comes to serve the directions of your own internal guidance system, of a power greater than your fear, that's when fulfillment can happen. And the last chapter in the book, I talk about the spiritual principles that inform aligned ambition.
Ooh,
and they
bring it up.
are non-duality, abundance, and non-duality and abundance are the two primary ones. And then faith. So let's talk about non-duality first. In Sanskrit, it means not to. And in our world today, we can see the impact of binary black and white thinking. And when we're in our success wound, we crave certainty, security, and control. And so the medicine here can be, I've done the very best thing that I can do, whether it's a project, a creative project, forming a team, building a business, writing a book. That's true. And I can also want to make it better. There's room for it being enough, and also for that room for growth and ambition and achievement. Because so often it's either one thing or the other. It's either good or it's bad. It's black and it's white. And so non-duality opens up the aperture for everything to be possible at once. And that's inherently a spiritual idea. The second idea is around abundance. And abundance, I love this definition. I think it's Marianne Williamson. It's looking at what remains as enough. And I wrote that chapter of the book in the middle of the LA fires, 37 weeks pregnant. The book was due January 15th. And my baby was due February, I think 9th, but he was a little small. So he could have been ejected at any moment. So there was this race to finish the book before the baby came. And if you recall, on January 8th is the day that the LA fires broke out. So on that day, I live about a mile from the Palisades. I went up to my roof. My husband was like, come up, you got to see this. And when I got up there, I saw more smoke and fire than sky. And, it happened in the Santa Monica Mountains. So I just saw this, honestly, it looked like lava that was kind of coming towards our house at an astonishing rate. And so we ran downstairs, grabbed everything that we could, not knowing what it would be or what it would become. But specifically, I said goodbye to the nursery that I had just spent the last 5 months preparing for. Our hospital was in the evac zone, so we didn't know what was going to happen. And, certainly over the next 48 hours, things were unfolding. I was checking in with my friends in the Palisades, because that's actually where I go to AA meetings, is in the Palisades. So in the Caruso village, there is my home group. And so, hundreds of people that I know live in the Palisades. It's this very special spiritual place for me and for my community. And so I was checking in on everyone, and they were saying things to me that I was actually writing about in real time. They were saying things like, I'm choosing to see what remains as enough. I'm here, my family's here, my community's still checking in on me. Like, even though I've lost everything, this is enough. They were saying other things like, I don't know what's going to happen next for me and my family. Our whole future has been wiped out, but I'm choosing to see it with the perspective of only the best is in front of us. And what they were talking about was this notion of like abundance. Abundance is is the perspective of choosing to see what remains as enough. And faith is when you look at uncertainty and saying, I'm choosing the perspective of whatever's in front of me, the best is yet to come. These people had just suffered incredible tragedy and uncertainty. And so often in our lives and our careers, we're faced with layoffs, reorgs, moving, diagnoses, whatever. But, what I write about in the book and what came into living color for me was this notion of we get to choose the way that we perceive our career through faith, abundance, and also non-duality, which is the choice to see things as gray rather than black and white. So with that in mind, it's kind of the energy of that. I finished the last chapter, turned in the book, and luckily my son came healthily, and we got to go back to our house a few weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this amazing story about the violinist Yitzhak Perelman. And he was, I'm not sure exactly of all the details, but I think it was Carnegie Hall. And he was in the middle of a performance and one of the strings on his violin broke. Now, that's very rare. Like strings on violins just don't break, you know? And Perlman has I think he had polio as a child. I think this is right. So to get off stage and back on stage would take forever, right? And so rather than stopping to change the string, he signals the conductor to continue. And he manages to play the piece by reworking it in real time, like instantly, modulating and changing finger positions to find the missing notes on the remaining 3 strings, right? And supposedly there was this, as you can imagine, just wild, uproarious applause at the end because it was absolutely athletic, you know? And he said to the audience, he has this great quote. He says, you know, sometimes it is the artist's task to find out how much music you can still make with what you have left. Oh my gosh. And that sort of reminded me, your story kind of reminded me of that. Like after the Palisades fire, like the true test is how much music can you still make with what you have left?
Oh, that gives me chills, genuinely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cool story about adaptability and creative and freedom and finding beauty and imperfection and the bumps and slumps of life.
I think what a lot of people, specifically in corporate, miss is the fact that our careers are an expression of our creativity. Our careers actually aren't meant to look linear up and to the right with our salaries or our revenue growing quarter over quarter consistently. That's a man-made idea. That's not a natural idea. Nature is cyclical. Money comes and goes, ebbs and flows. Creativity comes and goes, ebbs and flows. There are seasons and cycles to our life in the same way there are seasons and cycles to our work. And I think the more that we can embrace our role as the creative rather than just our role as an employee, the more resilient we are to setbacks like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you know when you're plugged into the true self versus the wounded self? Like like in your day-to-day life, because I'm sure you have moments where it goes like this, right? Like where you're phasing in and out one to the other, right? Like how do you know when you're in one or the other, and how do you get back to home?
You do toggle between them, sometimes in the same minute, sometimes in the same hour, sometimes in the same task. And it's always my intention with both myself and my clients to work more often from your true self rather than your success wound. We're never going to be perfect. I think it's part of our human condition, but we're always going to be toggling between the two. And so a sign for me that I'm working from true self, first and foremost, flow. I feel engaged with what I'm doing, appropriately challenged, kind of like downhill skiing. When you're looking at the mogul in front of you, or snowboarding, you're looking at the mogul in front of you and you're like, am I going to make it? You're fully in the moment. You're using all of your strength, your skills, your talents. There's a little bit of challenge, but you know you're going to probably clear it. That's first and foremost. The second is if you're able to handle difficulty, challenges, hard conversations, setbacks from a place of possibility. When you're in your success wound, more often than not, you're repeating the same patterns over and over again that's leading to similar results. So you aren't able to see possibility. You're only able to see limitation, sameness, like, oh, this is more of the same. So for example, you're constantly coming up with you're faced with uncertainty and you're constantly kind of coming up with hypotheses. It's like, oh, okay, this is what's going to happen, as opposed to being able to stay in the, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm going to be able to handle it one moment at a time. And then of course, finally, it's like, what's happening in your body? I know I'm in my success wound when there's a gripping in my throat, a sinking in my stomach, a tightness in my solar plexus. I know I'm in my true self when maybe there's a little bit of gripping, right? An appropriate amount of performance anxiety or something, but I'm sitting back, I'm breathing deeply, my nervous system is regulated. And we can, again, kind of toggle between these states. But when our nervous system is regulated, we're able to have perspective. We're able to be playful, kind of like we were at the beginning of the call, right? We don't take ourselves or things as seriously. And when we're working from that state, naturally, people want to work with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's where I want to land the plane. Because you're a person in recovery, and for some years now, you have drawn from the lexicon of wisdom that is available to us through the program. What kind of program-based wisdom do you find yourself most often sharing with clients? Because I like, people pay me to tell them stuff that they don't know I get for $1 every morning. You know what I mean? What for the person with a success wound, for your clients, like, what's the thing you tell them from your lexicon of knowledge from the world of recovery?
Let me think about that for a second. I think it's service. Because you can't be in your success wound and be in service at the same time.
Ooh.
Because when you're in genuine service, you're not consumed with fear, your own inadequacy. You're not in obsession. You're not in self-centered fear. But when you're in service, you're saying, how are you? Or can I do something that's inconvenient to me to be of service to you? That's also what builds self-worth over time. And if the success wound is a worthiness wound, being inconvenienced to be of service to others is something that is invaluable. And I think also in this world, they say we all want to be part of a village, but nobody wants to be a villager, right? And in order to create that village, you have to be a villager. You have to drive somebody to the airport. They could Uber. You have to drive them to the airport. They could get a babysitter, or you could offer to watch the monitor for them so they don't have to pay the $100 to go out to dinner. So inconveniencing yourself to be of service to others is something that I think we miss, especially when we're busy. We're in a busy season, when we're putting work ahead of everything else and making work our higher power. And I'm saying this to others just as much as I'm saying it to myself, because it's the thing that I mess up on the most.
Wow. Thank you. What a rich conversation. Goodness gracious. I got to cover all these things that I love: the Enneagram, recovery, success wounds. I could talk about wounds all day long. I'm a 4. So this is easy
the
peasy.
Jacuzzi we like to get into.
The jacuzzi we like to slip into. That's
pain,
it.
Sadness, sorrow.
Yummy sorrow.
Oh my God.
Hey, Brooke, tell everybody where they can learn more about what you're doing, about the book, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So the book, Healing the Success Wound, is available anywhere books are sold. If you come to my website, brooketaylorcoaching.com/book, you can get all of the resources and exercises in the book in a digital version, should you so desire. And then you can follow me on Instagram, Brooke V. Taylor.
Awesome.
Love it.
Brooke, all the best to you. Anthony, all the best to you, my friend.
Brother, same to you. And thank you, Brooke, for being on. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Yeah, it's rich.
Everybody, may you have love, may you have joy, may you have healing, may you have rest. Until next time, we'll see you later.